By the time the first snow began to fall, the outpost had already decided how it would die. Snow had a way of doing that in the mountains, quietly sealing fates while pretending to be beautiful. It drifted down in soft, indifferent sheets, muffling sound, hiding tracks, erasing the world beyond the razor wire. Christmas Eve had arrived without ceremony, without songs or lights, just the low thrum of generators and the ache of cold working its way into bone. Captain Mura Ilias stood in the command shack and watched the snow fall through a slit window that someone had taped plastic over weeks ago. The tape had yellowed. Everything yellowed up here. Maps, paper, teeth, hope. Comms check in 5, Sergeant Nolan said, pulling his scarf higher over his mouth. His breath fogged the air, hung there, then vanished. HQ on confirmation, we're holding position. Mara didn't answer immediately. She was listening to the wind, to the generator's uneven cough, to the way the mountain itself seemed to inhale and exhale around them. You learn to listen if you wanted to live. Holding position, HQ said. Hold until relief arrives. Hold because the schedule says relief arrives. Hold because the spreadsheet says so. Relief wasn't coming. Mara had known that since dawn. She turned away from the window. The shack was barely big enough for the table, the radio, and the 3 people inside. Maps were pinned everywhere, edges curling. Coffee burned in a metal pot. No one bothered to drink anymore. Tell them we're green, she said. Nolan blinked. Green. We're green. That's not accurate. She met his eyes. It's accurate enough. Nolan hesitated, then reached for the radio. He trusted her. They all did. Trust, like warmth, was rationed here, given carefully, never wasted. Outside, the team moved through routine with the brittle precision of people who'd been awake too long. Weapons cleaned for the 3rd time that day. Perimeter checked again and again, even though visibility had dropped to less than 50 meters. Someone had taped a scrap of red ribbon to the antenna as a joke. A Christmas decoration. Mara stepped outside, and the cold hit her like a slap. It wasn't just cold, it was hungry. It crept under clothing, into joints, whispered promises of sleep you might never wake from. She counted heads. 12. The same 12 she'd counted all month. The same 12 she was trying to get home. Lieutenant Park was crouched by the sensor array, fingers bare, moving fast despite the cold. Anything? Mara asked. Park shook her head. Sensors are jittery. Weather's messing with them. Could be nothing. Could be nothing. Could be everything. Mara nodded and moved on, boots crunching in the snow. The outpost sat on a narrow shelf carved into the mountain, a stubborn human scab against rock and ice. One road in, one road out. The road was gone now, buried under drifts and avalanches that HQ insisted were manageable. Manageable from a warm office. She stopped at the edge of the wire and looked down into the valley. Darkness pooled there, thick and patient. Somewhere below, something waited. She felt it. Not fear exactly, but pressure like the air before a storm. Christmas Eve, she thought. Of all nights. She remembered other Christmases. Warm kitchens. Laughter that felt too loud. Her mother humming while she cooked. Her father pretending not to cry when she left for training. She pushed the memory away. Nostalgia could kill you faster than bullets. The radio crackled. Mara, Nolan called from the shack. HQ's asking for confirmation of thermal stability. They're worried about the generator. Mara closed her eyes for a second. The generator had been coughing all day. Fuel was low. If it went down, heat went with it. Comms would follow. After that, it would just be a matter of time. Tell them we're stable, she said, within parameters. Captain, Sergeant. Nolan swallowed the rest of what he was going to say. Mara walked back toward the shack when the first shot echoed through the valley. It wasn't close. Yet, the sound cut through the snow like a blade. Everyone froze. Training kicked in a half-second later, bodies moving, weapons up, eyes scanning. Another shot, then another. Closer now. Deliberate. Contact, someone shouted. Mara was already running. They took positions along the wire, muzzles pointed into the white dark void beyond. The shots came in a slow rhythm, not suppressive fire. Testing fire. Probing. They're feeling us out, Park said, voice tight. How many? Mara asked. Hard to tell. Sensors are useless in this. Mara scanned the valley. Shapes moved, maybe shadows, maybe men. The snow made liars of them all. Hold fire, she ordered. A beat of silence. Captain, Nolan said, incredulous. There. Hold. Fire. She knew what they expected. Return fire. Show strength. Follow the rules. But rules were written for clear days and good intel, not Christmas Eve in a blizzard with a dying generator and relief that wasn't coming. Another shot cracked, closer still. A round snapped past the wire and buried itself in the snow behind them. Someone cursed. Captain, Park said, permission to... No, Mara said, not yet. She keyed her mic. All units, stay low. Watch for movement. Do not engage unless fired upon directly. They were being fired upon, but not directly enough. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. She could feel the team's tension like static. They trusted her, but trust had limits. Fear tested them. She forced herself to breathe. Think. The enemy, whoever they were, had the advantage in numbers. They always did. They knew the terrain. They'd been watching, waiting for weather like this. They wanted the outpost dark and quiet. They wanted panic. If the team opened up now, they'd reveal positions. They'd burn through ammo they couldn't replace. They'd escalate a fight they couldn't win. HQ would say hold position. Engage if necessary. Air support unavailable due to weather. Relief delayed. Delayed meant never. The shots stopped. Silence pressed in, thick as the snow. Minutes passed. 5, 10, nothing. Maybe they pulled back, someone whispered. Mara didn't answer. She didn't like silence. Silence was when things moved. The generator coughed. Once. Twice. Then it stuttered. Lights flickered across the outpost. Generators going. Nolan shouted from the shack. Mara swore and ran. Inside, the radio crackled uselessly. Nolan was already at the panel, hands flying. Fuel lines freezing, he said. I can reroute, but... The generator died. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the shack, sudden and absolute. The cold surged forward like a living thing. Backup, Mara asked. Nolan shook his head, barely visible. Backup's been dead for weeks. Of course it had. Outside, someone yelled. A shape slammed into the wire. Then another. They came out of the dark all at once, shadows moving fast, using the snow as cover. The first explosion rocked the perimeter, throwing snow and dirt into the air. Shrapnel screamed. Contact! Multiple hostiles! Park shouted over the chaos. Mara burst out of the shack, rifle up. Muzzle flashes lit the storm in stuttering bursts. The team returned fire now, discipline fraying under pressure. Fall back to secondary, someone yelled. The radio was dead. Comms were dead. The outpost had gone blind and deaf in the span of seconds. Mara dropped behind a crate, mind racing. This was it. This was how outposts died, slowly, then all at once. Cut off. Overwhelmed. Forgotten. She thought of HQ, warm and lit, watching status lights that still said green. She thought of her team, faces tense in the muzzle flash, breath ragged. She thought of the order she'd been given that morning. Hold position. Under no circumstances abandon the outpost. She laughed, short and sharp, the sound ripped away by the wind. No circumstances, she muttered. Sure. Another explosion rocked the wire. Someone screamed. Mara made a decision. It took less than a second. Park, she shouted, crawling to her side. How long to bring the generator back if the line's cleared? Park's eyes flicked toward the shack. 5 minutes. Maybe more. We don't have 5. No, we don't. Mara glanced toward the far edge of the outpost, where the mountain dropped away into a narrow ravine. She'd studied that ravine for weeks, memorized its angles, its risks. It wasn't on any map HQ cared about. What if we don't bring it back? Mara said. Park stared at her. Captain, what if we don't stay? Park's mouth opened. Closed. Orders are a death sentence, Mara finished. Listen to me. They're probing, pushing. They think we're pinned here. If we try to hold, they'll bleed us dry. But they don't expect us to move. Not in this weather. Park followed her gaze to the ravine. Her eyes widened. That path's barely passable, she said. And with the snow, it's invisible, Mara said, which works both ways. A round slammed into the crate above them, showering splinters. "We've got 1 minute," Mara said. 1 minute to disappear. Park swallowed. "HQ will write reports," Mara said. "Or eulogies. Your choice." Park nodded once. Mara keyed her mic, switching to the emergency short-range channel. It crackled, barely holding. "All units," she said, voice steady despite the chaos. "This is Captain Ilias. New orders." She felt the weight of them, the training manuals, the protocols, the careers that could end with what she was about to say. She didn't hesitate. "Break contact immediately. Move to Rally Point Echo. Repeat, abandon the outpost." For a heartbeat, there was stunned silence. Then Nolan's voice cut through. "Say again." "You heard me," Mara said. "Move. Now." "But the is compromised," Mara snapped. "This is not a drill. Go." She was already moving, firing controlled bursts to cover the withdrawal. The team reacted, training overriding disbelief. They peeled back in pairs, smoke grenades hissing, white clouds blooming and blending with the storm. Enemy fire intensified, confused. Shouts echoed in a language Mara didn't understand. Good, she thought. Confusion buys time. They reached the ravine in seconds that felt like hours. It was a narrow cut in the rock, steep and treacherous, but it led down and away from the outpost, into a maze of ice and stone no one would follow willingly in this weather. Mara counted heads again as they slid, scrambled, half fell into the ravine. 12. All 12. She was last, as always. She tossed a final grenade, not at the enemy, but at the fuel dump. The explosion roared, heat washing over her back as the outpost went up in flames. Fire lit the snow, turned night into day for a brief, blinding moment. Then she was gone, swallowed by the mountain. They moved for hours, guided by memory and instinct more than sight. The storm covered their tracks, erased them as fast as they made them. The cold gnawed, but movement kept it at bay. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. When they finally stopped, huddled in a narrow cave that barely deserved the name, dawn was a pale rumor on the horizon. Mara leaned against the rock, exhaustion crashing over her now that the adrenaline had burned out. Nolan sank down beside her, breathing hard. He looked at her for a long moment. "You just disobeyed a direct order," he said finally. Mara nodded. "I know. That outpost gone." "Yes. If HQ finds out." "They will," Mara said. Eventually, he studied her face, then looked around at the team, alive, battered, but alive. He allowed a shaky laugh. "Merry Christmas, Captain." She smiled despite herself. "Merry Christmas." They were found 2 days later by a patrol that hadn't been diverted by spreadsheets and assumptions. By then, HQ had marked the outpost as lost with all hands. All hands, it turned out, had other plans. Mara stood in a heated tent, stripped of her frozen gear, facing a tribunal of clean uniforms and controlled voices. They spoke of protocol, of precedent, of consequences. She listened politely. When they were done, she said, "With respect, sir, holding that position would have killed my team." There was a pause, an uncomfortable one. Finally, someone cleared their throat. "You acted without authorization." "Yes," Mara said. "I acted with responsibility." Another pause. Outside, her team waited. 1 minute, she thought. That was all it took. 1 minute to decide that orders written far away didn't matter as much as the lives standing in front of her. Christmas Eve had been a death sentence, until she tore it up, and the mountain, indifferent as ever, let them live.